What this mother did after being uninvited from her own son's wedding will leave you speechless. And you will absolutely be cheering by the end. You have to see how this plays out. I arrived at my own son's wedding, a beautiful, sprawling vineyard estate. And when I gave my name to the young woman at the guest table, she looked at me with a pained confusion. "I'm sorry, ma'am, I don't see an Emily here." "Oh, there must be a mistake," I said, my smile feeling tight. "I'm Emily, the groom's mother." She checked the list again, her finger tracing down the elegant script. "I'm so sorry, but your name isn't here." My heart did a little stutter step. I scanned the crowd of perfectly dressed guests milling on the lawn, searching for my son, Michael. And then I saw him. He was standing with his groomsmen, laughing, looking so handsome in his tailored tuxedo. When I finally caught his eye and waved him over, the laugh died on his lips. His expression hardened. "Mom, what are you doing here?" he asked, his voice low and tight with irritation. "Michael, honey, I came to your wedding," I said, trying to keep my voice light. "There seems to be a mix-up. My name isn't on the list." He looked at me, his eyes filled with a coldness I'd never seen before. He rolled his eyes, a gesture of pure contempt. "Did you really think you would be invited?" I smiled. It was a calm, serene smile that seemed to confuse him more than any tears or shouting ever could have. "I understand perfectly," I told him, my voice even. "Have a wonderful day," and I turned and walked away. But as I was heading back towards the grand entrance, right in the middle of their pre-ceremony cocktails, my son's entire world was about to start ringing off the hook. My name is Emily. I am 68 years old, and on that day, I finally understood that I had raised a stranger. For decades, I had dedicated my entire existence to that boy. My husband James died in a tragic car accident when Michael was just 5 years old. A bright, funny, loving man, gone in an instant. I was left alone, a young widow with a little boy who had his father's eyes. I gave that boy my whole life. I worked 3 jobs to keep us afloat, to make sure he had everything he ever wanted. I was a waitress at a local diner in the mornings. I cleaned offices in the afternoon, and I did bookkeeping from our tiny kitchen table at night. I gave up my own youth, my own dreams of traveling, my own chance to maybe find love again, so that he could achieve his dreams. When he graduated from Columbia with his architecture degree, I sat in the audience, tears streaming down my face, thinking every single sacrifice, every exhausting shift had been worth it. But I never imagined that this same son, the one I loved more than life itself, would throw me out of his wedding like a piece of trash. Olivia, his fiancée, had been the architect of it all. From the moment she floated into our lives, she began to subtly poison Michael's mind against me. "Your mother is just a little much, don't you think?" she'd say to him, loud enough for me to hear. A woman her age should have her own hobbies, not just be waiting for us to call. And Michael, my Michael, would just listen to her and nod like a puppet on a string. Little by little, the visits became less frequent. The weekly Sunday dinners I lived for turned into bi-weekly, then monthly. The calls became colder, the excuses more elaborate. The first time Olivia truly disrespected me, Michael said nothing. We were having dinner at my small, humble apartment, the one I'd lived in for 40 years. Olivia took one bite of my famous lasagna and made a face. "Wow, this is very hearty," she said, pushing her plate away. "I just don't get how Michael grew up eating this kind of stuff and didn't end up overweight." I froze, my fork halfway to my mouth, waiting, just waiting for my son to defend the food he had loved his entire childhood. But he just kept eating, his eyes glued to his plate as if nothing had happened. Then came the more cutting, subtle humiliations. "Emily, don't you think that floral blouse is a little cheerful for you?" Olivia would say with a smile that never reached her eyes. Or when I once showed up at their luxury apartment downtown with a bag of groceries, just to be helpful. "Oh, Emily," she'd sighed, blocking the doorway. "We would have preferred if you called. We're busy people, you know, planning our future." And Michael, my son, always nodded. He always supported her. But the real gut punch was when they announced their engagement. They threw a lavish party at a rooftop bar in Manhattan. I was the last to know. I got a text from Michael that evening. "Hey, Mom, me and Olivia have some news. Can you come to this address?" I arrived, expecting a simple dinner, and found myself walking into a full-blown engagement party. Olivia was the center of attention, flashing a diamond ring the size of a small planet, surrounded by her wealthy parents and siblings. "Surprise!" They all shouted, though it felt more like an ambush. I forced a smile, congratulated them, hugged my son. But inside, I felt a deep structural crack in my heart. "Mom," Michael said to me later that night, pulling me aside. His tone was different, colder, more distant. "Olivia and I have been talking about the wedding." "Oh, that's so exciting," I said, my hope flickering back to life. "Yeah, we want something." "Intimate," he said, not meeting my eyes. "Just close family and our most important friends?" I nodded, assuming, of course, that the woman who raised him single-handedly, who sacrificed everything for him, was included in the close family category. How naive I was. The following weeks were a masterclass in exclusion. Olivia was in charge of all the preparations, a general commanding an army of florists, caterers, and designers. Every time I asked a simple question, like what colors they had chosen or if I could help with anything, she'd give me a vague, dismissive answer. "We're still figuring out the vibe." "Emily," she'd say, tapping away on her phone, "we'll let you know," but they never let me know anything. 3 days before the wedding, a knot of anxiety in my stomach, I called Michael. "Honey, I still haven't received my invitation. I just wanted to check what time I should be at the vineyard on Saturday." There was a long, dead silence on the other end of the line. "Mom," he finally said, and the single word was laced with dread. "Listen, Olivia and we've decided the wedding is going to be for, well, our crowd. You know, our friends, her family." I felt the air leave my lungs. "But Michael," I said, my voice trembling, "I am your mother." "I know," he replied, and his voice was so devoid of emotion it was terrifying. "But Olivia feels, well, you just don't really fit the aesthetic we're trying to create. It's a very high-end, modern event. I didn't fit their aesthetic." Those words echoed in my head for the next 72 hours. The woman who had scrubbed floors on her hands and knees so he could have piano lessons. The woman who had worked until 2 a.m. balancing books so he could afford his fancy architecture school supplies. The woman who gave up her entire life for him. I didn't fit their image, but I decided to go anyway. I had to see it for myself. I put on my best dress, a simple but elegant navy blue one I'd bought months ago, dreaming of dancing with my son at his wedding. I did my hair, put on a little makeup, and took a taxi all the way out to the North Fork of Long Island. I thought that maybe, just maybe, seeing me there in the flesh, he would snap out of it. That he would remember all the nights I held his head over the toilet when he had the flu, all the school projects I helped him build at the kitchen table, all the sacrifices I made with a smile on my face. How wrong I was. When I arrived at that beautiful venue and gave my name, the receptionist checked the list once, twice, 3 times. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but your name isn't here." That's when I saw him approaching, a thundercloud on his handsome face. "Mom, what are you doing here?" he asked, his tone dripping with annoyance. "Michael, I came to your wedding," I said, my voice starting to break. "My name isn't on the list, but it has to be a mistake." He looked at me with that chilling coldness again. "It's not a mistake, Mom, I told you. It was just for our inner circle." "But I am your family," I begged, the words catching in my throat. "I am your mother." Michael let out a heavy sigh and rolled his eyes. "Did you really think you were going to be invited after everything?" Those words hit me like a physical blow. "Everything? Michael, what did I do?" "I gave you everything. Exactly," he spat, his voice laced with contempt. "Always giving, always smothering, always hovering. Olivia is right. You never knew your place." Just then, Olivia arrived, a vision in white lace, a glowing bride. But when she saw me, her perfect smile froze and curdled. "What is she doing here?" she demanded, looking at Michael as if I were a cockroach on her couture gown. "She's just leaving," he replied, not even looking at me. "Right, Mom?" I could have screamed. I could have cried. I could have made a scene that they would never forget. But instead, a strange, profound calm washed over me. I smiled. A genuine, serene smile that completely unnerved them both. "I understand perfectly," I told them. "Have a beautiful wedding." And I turned and left. But as I walked toward the exit, my steps steady and sure, I pulled out my phone and dialed a number. "William," I said, when the man on the other end picked up. "It's Emily. I think it's time we execute the plan we discussed." William has been my lawyer for over 30 years, my late husband's closest friend, and the only person on earth who knew all my secrets. "Are you sure, Em?" he asked, his voice heavy with concern. "Once you push this button, there's no going back." "Completely sure," I replied, my voice hard as steel as I climbed into the waiting taxi. Michael just showed me exactly what I'm worth to him. It's time he learned what he's really, truly going to lose. As the taxi pulled away from the vineyard, my phone started buzzing. It wasn't Michael calling to apologize. It was Olivia, sending a barrage of furious texts. "How dare you show up here uninvited? Do you have no dignity? Michael is furious with you. I hope you're happy you tried to ruin our special day, tried to ruin their special day. That girl had no idea what it really meant to ruin something, but she was about to get a crash course." I got home to my small apartment, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel small at all. I felt a strange and powerful calm. For so long, I had been walking on eggshells, trying not to be a bother, trying to be the perfect, invisible mother-in-law who was always available but never in the way. But that night, as I took off the dress I had bought for a wedding I wasn't wanted at, I made the most important decision of my life. I was retiring, not from work. I was retiring from being a mother. You see, Michael never knew the truth about our financial situation. He grew up seeing me as Emily the waitress, Emily the office cleaner. He saw my sacrifices, my worn-out shoes, my constant struggle to make ends meet. It was a narrative I carefully constructed. What I never told him was that my late husband, James, wasn't just some guy who died too young. He was the only son of a real estate and hospitality mogul. When James and I got married, we decided we wanted to live a simple life, to raise our son away from the corrupting influence of extreme wealth. We wanted him to learn the value of hard work, of character, of people. My job at the diner? It wasn't just a job. I owned the diner. It was the very first restaurant my father-in-law ever bought. I worked there to stay connected to my husband's memory and to the simple values we cherished. When James died, I was the sole heir to an empire. Properties across NYC, a portfolio of successful restaurants, stocks in major companies. A fortune that Michael couldn't even begin to imagine. But I kept living in my same rent-controlled apartment. I kept my old car. I kept working, because I wanted my son to value me, for the mother who loved him, not for the money I had. What a terrible, catastrophic mistake that had been, that very night. While Michael and Olivia were dancing and drinking champagne, I was on my laptop. I was transferring funds. I was making calls. I was setting in motion a plan that William and I had designed years ago as a worst-case scenario contingency. The next day, as they woke up in their 5-star hotel before jetting off to their honeymoon, their world had already begun to shift beneath their feet. At first, it was subtle. Michael called me 3 days after the wedding from a beach in Cancun. He didn't call to apologize. He called to ask me for a favor. "Hey, Mom," he said, his voice casual, as if he hadn't just shattered my heart into a million pieces. "Listen, Olivia and I need you to go by the apartment, water her plants, and pick up our mail. Oh, and Olivia said if you have time, could you tidy up a bit? Her parents are coming over when we get back." "I can't," I replied simply. There was a pause. "What do you mean you can't?" he asked, a note of surprise in his voice. "I'm busy," I said. "Find someone else." And I hung up. An hour later, Olivia was screaming at me over the phone. "What is your problem, Emily? Are you being serious right now? It's the absolute least you could do after the pathetic scene you caused at our wedding." "I didn't cause a scene, Olivia," I answered, my voice as placid as a lake. "I simply went to see my son get married." "Your son didn't want you there," she shrieked. "Get it through your thick working-class head. You are a burden to him. A burden, after everything. After all the sacrifices, I was a burden." "You're right, Olivia," I said, and she quieted, surprised. "I am a burden, and that's why I've decided to free him from it. Forever." "What are you talking about?" she asked, her tone shifting from rage to confusion. "I mean, I'm retiring," I said. "Michael no longer has a mother. I hung up the phone and turned it off. It was time for my new life to begin. The very next day, I had movers come and pack up a few sentimental belongings, photos of James, Michael's childhood drawings, my favorite books. The rest I donated to a women's shelter. I left the keys to my apartment on the counter and took a car to a 5-star penthouse suite at the Mandarin Oriental overlooking Central Park. I wasn't buying a new place yet. I wanted time. I wanted to enjoy the freedom I had denied myself for over 30 years. William visited me at the hotel that first week, his briefcase full of documents. "Emily, last chance to turn back," he said, looking at me over his glasses as he reviewed the papers I'd had him prepare. "I've been sure since the moment my son looked at me with disgust at his own wedding," I replied, sipping a perfectly made cappuccino. "That boy and his wife think I'm some poor, pathetic old woman who they can discard. It's time they learn the truth." The papers William held were the eviction notice for Michael's luxury apartment, stock sale confirmations, and the document that was going to be the real killer. It was the deed to the entire apartment building he lived in, the apartment he thought he was renting with his impressive architect's salary. It was one of my buildings. I had been letting him live there for a fraction of the market rate, a secret subsidy I was paying myself for years. But that wasn't all. The prestigious architecture firm where Michael worked, Davis & Associates. The owner, Mr. Davis, had been my husband's college roommate. When Michael graduated, I had called Mr. Davis and asked him to give my son a chance. Michael got the job, but for years I had also been getting quiet, unofficial reports on his performance. My son was a competent but deeply mediocre employee. He had kept his high-paying job not because of his genius, but because of my influence. And Olivia? She had no idea who she'd really married. Her brand-new husband, the successful architect she loved to brag about, was the son of a woman who could buy and sell her entire family 10 times over without even noticing. While they were sipping margaritas in Cancun, spending the thousands of dollars Olivia's parents had gifted them, I was getting a hot stone massage at the hotel spa. It was the first time I had truly relaxed in decades. I had always been so busy working for Michael, worrying about Michael, living for Michael, that I had completely forgotten how to live for myself. And it was during that massage, with the scent of lavender in the air, that I made my next decision. I wasn't just going to retire from being a mother. I was going to make sure that Michael and Olivia understood, in excruciating detail, exactly what they had thrown away. When Michael and Olivia returned from their honeymoon, tanned, relaxed, and utterly oblivious, the problems began. First, the key to their luxury apartment building didn't work. After buzzing the doorman, who looked at them with newfound indifference, they found a crisp, white envelope taped to their front door. It was from the building management. "What's this?" Olivia asked, pulling it off the door while Michael fumbled with the newly rekeyed lock. She tore it open. Her face went from sun-kissed bliss to a mask of confusion. "It's a rent invoice," she said, bewildered. "For the full market rate. It says our previous special arrangement has been terminated and rent is due in 5 days. Or eviction proceedings will begin." "That's gotta be a mistake," Michael muttered, finally getting the door open. "I'll call the management office tomorrow. It's probably just a computer glitch." But the glitches kept coming. The next day, the power was cut off. The bill, which I had been paying automatically from one of my accounts for years, hadn't been paid. Michael called me, his voice tight with frustration. "Mom, why didn't you pay the electric bill for the apartment?" "Because it's not my responsibility, Michael," I answered calmly from my suite, where I was enjoying a beautiful view of Central Park. "And because I'm not your mom anymore." "What are you talking about?" "Of course you're my mom," he said, his voice rising. "No," I said, my tone flat and final. "Mothers get invited to their sons' weddings. I wasn't invited. Therefore, I am not your mother." He was silent for a moment. I could hear his sharp, angry breaths. "Mom, don't be ridiculous. It was just a wedding." "Exactly," I replied. "Just a wedding. The most important day of your life. And you decided I had no place there. Now you get to live with the consequences of that decision. But you've always paid my utilities," he shouted, the entitlement thick in his voice. "It's your obligation." "My obligation?" I repeated, a hot flare of anger finally piercing my calm. I had scrubbed toilets to give him a life of privilege, and he dared to speak to me of obligation. Michael, for over 30 years, I fulfilled obligations that were never mine to begin with. I raised you, I fed you, I educated you. That's where my obligation ended. The rest was a gift, and you threw it back in my face. That gift is now revoked. I hung up and immediately dialed Mr. Davis's private number. "Good morning, Mr. Davis," I said. "It's Emily. I think it's time we had a frank discussion about Michael." "Oh, Emily," Mr. Davis sighed on the other end of the line. He sounded weary. "I was figuring you'd be calling. I heard about what happened at the wedding. That boy, he has no idea what you've done for him, does he?" "That's precisely why I'm calling," I said. "I want you to start treating him like any other employee. No more safety net, no more covering for his mistakes. I want him to see what his career looks like without my influence." Mr. Davis was quiet for a moment. "Emily, if I remove my protection, Michael is going to be in serious trouble here. His work is average at best. He's consistently late on deadlines, and several big clients have complained about his arrogant attitude." "Then handle the situation as you see fit," I replied, my voice unyielding. "I will no longer intervene on his behalf." Meanwhile, Olivia was about to have her own rude awakening. The platinum credit card she used for her daily shopping sprees, the one she loved to flash at her favorite designer boutiques on Madison Avenue, had been canceled. It was, of course, a supplementary card on my primary account, an account she never knew existed, which I had been silently paying off for years so Michael could keep his high-maintenance fiancée, now wife, happy. When Olivia tried to buy a new pair of shoes that cost more than my old monthly rent, the saleswoman gave her the dreaded look. "I'm so sorry, ma'am. The card's been declined." Humiliated, she tried it again. "Declined. There must be some mistake," Olivia hissed. "That's a premium card." The saleswoman typed something into her computer. "I'm sorry, it says the account has been closed by the primary cardholder." That night, she stormed into the dark apartment. They still hadn't figured out how to get the power back on, and screamed at Michael. "David, your mother canceled my credit card. Call her right now and tell her to reactivate it." Michael, who was trying to read the fuse box manual by his phone's flashlight, called me, absolutely fuming. "Mom, how can you be so petty? Olivia needs that card for her expenses." "Olivia can get her own card," I answered coolly. "Or you can get one for her with your excellent credit." "Oh, wait," I added, the sarcasm dripping like ice. "You don't have any credit, do you? Because you've never actually paid for anything in your entire adult life. You're a bitter, lonely old woman," he yelled into the phone. "That's why nobody loves you. That's why Dad left you." His words hit me, but this time the pain was different. It wasn't the fresh wound of a son's betrayal. It was the dull ache of a final confirmation. He had no idea his father was dead. In all his years, in all his self-absorption, he never once asked about the details of his father's disappearance. I had told him his father had left us when he was a boy, a simple story to protect a small child's heart. But he never circled back. He never asked the hard questions. He just accepted the story that made him a victim and me a martyr. "Michael," I said, my voice firm and clear, all the old pain now forged into pure strength. "For 33 years, I swallowed my pride so you could have everything you ever wanted. I let you believe I was a pathetic, abandoned woman. I worked myself to the bone. I gave up my own happiness, and at the most important moment of your life, you treated me like garbage. You are going to learn what it means to stand on your own 2 feet. This is your first lesson." I hung up and turned off my phone. It was time for the next step. The next day, I visited Olivia at her job. She worked as a senior stylist at a ridiculously expensive boutique in Soho, the kind of place that doesn't have price tags and where the air smells like money and judgment. It was her kingdom, a place where she felt powerful by association. I arrived not as Emily the waitress, but as Emily the heiress. I wore a tailored Chanel suit I'd had stored for years. My hair was perfectly coiffed from the salon at the hotel, and I carried a classic Hermès Birkin bag. When I walked in, the entire staff stopped what they were doing and stared. I looked like their biggest client. Olivia was fawning over a wealthy socialite, but when she saw me, her jaw practically hit the floor. Her professional smile vanished. "What are you doing here?" she whispered, her voice a mix of fury and shock. I came to shop, I replied loudly and clearly, letting my eyes sweep over the racks of clothing. Isn't that what one does in a store? Or is your job just to stand there and look decorative? The socialite she was helping looked from me to Olivia, confused by Olivia's blatant hostility. Olivia, darling, do you know this woman? She asked. She's my mother-in-law? Olivia spat out, as if the words tasted like poison. The one who doesn't know her place. I smiled warmly at the socialite. Oh, but I do know my place. My place is that of a woman who is about to spend a great deal of money. So, Olivia, I said, turning my attention back to her, are you going to help me or should I ask for your manager? Olivia turned beet red. She couldn't make a scene in front of her prize client. What are you looking for? She asked through gritted teeth. I'd like to see that runway piece in the display case, I said, pointing to a stunning avant-garde coat. The feathered one. I knew for a fact it was the single most expensive item in the entire store. It cost $25,000. Olivia's eyes widened in disbelief. $25,000? She mouthed silently. Is there an echo in here? Yes, the $25,000 one. Do you think I can't afford it? Muttering under her breath, Olivia went to retrieve the coat. When she returned, she held it out with a look of pure disdain. Here, she said. But I didn't let her finish. I took out my American Express Centurion card, the legendary black card, and handed it to her. Ring it up, dear, I said sweetly. And while you're processing that, I want you to know something. Olivia took the card, her hands trembling slightly, and walked to the register. When she swiped it, the machine didn't just approve the transaction. It flashed a credit limit of no preset limit. Her face went completely white. How? She stammered, looking from the card to me. How can a poor, pathetic old woman like me have a card like this? I finished for her, walking over to the counter. It's quite simple, Olivia. I'm not poor. I never was. I took out my phone, opened my primary investment portfolio app, and laid it on the counter. Olivia's eyes darted to the screen. The number at the top, a staggering 8-figure sum, made her gasp audibly. This can't be real, she whispered, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. Do you see that number? I asked, my voice low and dangerous. That's just my stock portfolio. It doesn't include the real estate in Manhattan, the restaurant group, or the properties my late husband's family owned in Europe. I have more money than your father will ever make in 10 lifetimes. Olivia stumbled back, her hand flying to her mouth. Why? Why did you hide it? Why did you pretend to be nothing? Because I wanted my son to value me for who I was, not for what I had, I answered, my voice hardening. I wanted him to become a man of character and integrity. But you two showed me that to people like you, character is worthless. Image is everything. So I decided to show you what you're really losing. I took my new coat and my card, and I turned to leave. At the door, I paused and looked back at her, a hollowed-out shell of a woman standing amidst racks of clothes she could no longer afford. Oh, and one more thing, I said, delivering the final blow. Michael is going to be fired next week. And the luxury apartment you're living in? The eviction notice is already on its way. I hope you're a good saver, dear. You're going to need it. I walked out of the boutique, leaving Olivia completely shattered in the silent, expensive air. That night, she arrived home to a still dark apartment, shaking with a combination of rage and terror. Michael was sitting on the floor, surrounded by candles, on the phone with the bank, trying to figure out why his debit card had been declined. Michael! Olivia shrieked from the doorway. Your mother was at my store today. Michael put his head in his hands. What now? She has money, Michael. Like millions. Olivia's voice was hysterical. She showed me her bank account. She bought a $25,000 coat like it was a pack of gum. Michael looked up, his face a mask of exhaustion and disbelief. 25,000? Olivia, you're not making sense. My mom is a retired waitress. She lives on a fixed income. That's what she wanted us to think, Olivia yelled, pacing frantically in the candlelight. She's been lying to you your whole life. She's a manipulative sociopath, David. She made you think she was poor just to control you. But for the first time, Michael wasn't so sure his mother was the villain. He was remembering things. The time in college when he needed an emergency root canal, and she'd shown up with the exact amount of cash needed for the specialist. The down payment for his first car, which she'd called her life savings. The way she never, ever seemed stressed about money, only about him. "Olivia," he said slowly, the pieces clicking into place with a horrifying sound. "I don't think my mom ever lied to us about her money. I think we just never bothered to know her." "What are you talking about?" Olivia shrieked. "You lived with her. You grew up with her." "Exactly," Michael replied, a dawning horror in his eyes. "I grew up with her. And I never once asked about her life before me. I never asked about her family. I never asked about my father. I just took and took and took, and she just gave and gave and gave." That conversation was the beginning of the end for them. Olivia couldn't process that her dream husband, the successful architect from a simple background, was actually a mediocre employee propped up by a secret heiress. What would she tell her friends? Her parents? That she'd married a man whose entire life was a lie? I, on the other hand, was in my penthouse suite, going over plans with an interior designer for a new foundation I was starting. My phone was on silent. I knew they were probably calling, texting, panicking. But I had learned my lesson. When people show you who they are, believe them the first time. The next morning, I put on a sharp, elegant pantsuit and took a car to Davis & Associates. When I walked into the sleek, minimalist lobby, the receptionist looked up, startled. I looked like I was there to buy the firm, not visit an employee. Michael came out of his glass-walled office, his face a mess of confusion and dread. "Mom, what are you doing here?" "I came to talk to you," I said, my voice calm and professional. "Can we speak privately?" We went into the main conference room, a huge space with a panoramic view of the city. I closed the glass door behind us. "Michael," I began, sitting at the head of the long table, "I want you to know something. For your entire career here, Mr. Davis has been incredibly patient with you. He's overlooked your tardiness, your missed deadlines, your attitude. He did it out of respect for my late husband and as a favor to me. But that favor has now expired." "What are you talking about?" he asked, his voice trembling. "I'm talking about the fact that Mr. Davis knows you're a mediocre architect, Michael. He knows that 3 of your biggest clients have specifically requested you be taken off their projects. The only thing that has kept you in this job, at this salary, has been my influence." Michael turned ghost white. "That's not true," he whispered. "I'm good at my job." I simply picked up my phone and dialed the extension for the owner's office. "Mr. Davis, it's Emily. Could you please join us in the main conference room? My son has some questions about his historical job performance." 5 minutes later, Mr. Davis walked in, his face grim, holding a thick file folder. "Good morning." "Michael," he said, his voice devoid of its usual warmth. "Your mother asked me to show you this." He opened the folder and began laying out printed reports. "These are your performance reviews from the last 5 years. As you can see, your project completion rate is 20% below the firm average. You have been formally cited for being late 57 times. And these," he said, tapping a stack of letters, "are formal complaints from the Sterling, Northgate, and Riverwood accounts, all detailing your unprofessional and arrogant demeanor." Michael stared at the papers, his hands shaking. "But no one ever told me any of this." "Because your mother asked me to give you time to mature," Mr. Davis continued, his voice heavy with disappointment. "She has been silently cleaning up your messes for years. She has personally apologized to clients. She has even, on 2 occasions, used her own money to compensate the firm for financial losses you caused due to errors in your blueprints." "That's a lie," Michael whispered, tears welling in his eyes. "It's not a lie." "Son," I said, my voice softer now but no less firm, "for years I've been patching the holes in your career, hoping one day you'd grow into the man I knew you could be. The man your father was. But I was wrong. You're not him. You're the man who would humiliate his own mother for the sake of a modern aesthetic." Mr. Davis closed the folder. "Michael, as a final personal favor to your mother, I am giving you 2 weeks severance. After that, your employment here is terminated. I think it's time you see what the job market is really like for an architect with your track record." He stood up and left us alone in the silent, sunlit room. Michael looked at me, his eyes pleading. All the arrogance and contempt finally gone, replaced by raw, desperate fear. "Mom, please, you can't let him do this. Olivia will leave me if I lose this job." You should have thought of that before you told me I wasn't good enough for your wedding, I replied, standing up. You are about to learn what it truly means to lose something you love. I started to walk away, but he grabbed my arm. Wait, you can't do this! I'm your son. I pulled my arm free, my gaze unwavering. No, I said, the words a final, painful verdict. My son would have defended his mother. My son would have cherished his family. My son would have been a good man. You, Michael, are a stranger living in a building I own, who just lost a job I got for him, married to a woman who is about to discover she married a fraud. I walked out of that office, and for the first time in my adult life, I felt completely, utterly, and gloriously free. That night, Michael arrived back at the dark, cold apartment, a completely broken man. Olivia was waiting for him, not with a glass of wine, but with 2 suitcases packed by the door. Her own, what's this? He asked, his voice hollow. I'm leaving, Michael, she said, her tone as cold and hard as the diamond on her finger. I'm going back to my parents' house. Olivia, no, we can fix this, he pleaded, reaching for her. We just need to talk to my mom. We can apologize. Olivia let out a sharp, cruel laugh. Apologize? Michael, do you get it yet? There's nothing to apologize for. Your mother is playing a game, and she just won. Checkmate. I didn't sign up to be married to an unemployed, mediocre architect who lives off his mommy's secret fortune. I am not going to be a part of your public humiliation. So that's it? He asked, his voice cracking. The moment things get hard, you're just gone? The vows said, for richer, for poorer, Michael, she said, picking up her designer handbag. They didn't say anything about for successful, for a complete and utter fraud. My parents were right about you. You always had the stink of new money, or in your case, no money, about you. Goodbye. She walked out without a backward glance, the click of the door echoing in the cavernous, empty apartment. Michael sank to the floor, alone in the dark, surrounded by the ruins of a life he now realized had never truly been his. The next 2 weeks were a brutal education. The official eviction notice arrived. His bank accounts, now empty of my support, were overdrawn. He tried applying for other architecture jobs, but his resume, without the protection of the Davis and Associates name and my silent influence, was met with a wall of polite rejections. He was forced to sell his expensive watch, his designer clothes, anything of value just to afford food. He was sleeping on the floor of the empty apartment, waiting for the marshals to arrive. He hit rock bottom, and it was there, in the silence and the darkness, that he finally started to think. He thought about his entire life, not as the hero of his own story, but as a supporting character in his mother's. He remembered her coming home from the diner, smelling of coffee and grease, her feet aching, but always with a smile for him. He remembered her staying up all night with him when he had a fever, her cool hand on his forehead. He remembered her cheering the loudest at his soccer games, her face beaming with a pride that he had so carelessly discarded. He realized Olivia was right about one thing. His mother had been playing a game, but it wasn't a game of manipulation. It was a game of protection. She had built a fortress around him, not to control him, but to shield him from the harsh realities of a world she knew all too well. And his thanks? He had kicked her out of the fortress and told her she didn't fit the aesthetic. One afternoon, a week after Olivia had left, Michael found a dusty old shoebox at the back of his closet. It was filled with his old childhood report cards and drawings. Tucked at the very bottom was a yellowed envelope he'd never seen before. It was addressed to him in his father's handwriting. With trembling hands, he opened it. It was a letter, a long one. James had written it when Michael was 4. After James had received a terminal medical diagnosis he'd kept secret from everyone but me. It was a letter for his son to read when he was older. My dearest Michael, it began. If you are reading this, it means I am no longer with you, and for that I am so deeply sorry. But I want you to know that my greatest joy in this short life was being your father. I want you to grow up to be a good man, a man of integrity, kindness, and strength, a man who honors his mother. Your mother, Emily, is the most incredible woman I have ever known. She is strong and brave, and her heart is bigger than the whole world. She has a secret strength you may never know, a legacy she put aside for you, for us. Please, son, never forget her value. Cherish her. Protect her. The world can be a cold place, but a mother's love is the only true home you will ever have. Be the man I know you can be. I love you always, Dad. Tears streamed down Michael's face as he read the letter over and over. His father hadn't abandoned them. He had died, and his mother had borne that grief alone, creating a simpler narrative to protect his young heart. She had carried the weight of her sorrow, the weight of a financial empire, and the weight of raising a son, all on her own. And he had repaid her with contempt. That was the moment everything changed. It wasn't about the money or the job anymore. It was about his soul. He took the subway, a mode of transport he hadn't used in a decade, to the Queens neighborhood where I used to live. He went to the diner, the one he always thought I just worked at. The new owner, a woman I'd sold it to for a fraction of its worth, recognized him. "Michael?" she said, surprised. "Your mother. She was so proud of you." He spent an hour talking to her, learning about the real Emily. The Emily who knew every regular's order by heart, who slipped free meals to the homeless, who acted more like the owner than the waitress she pretended to be. He left the diner with a new resolve. He wasn't going to beg for my money. He was going to earn my forgiveness. He sold his last remaining asset, the ridiculously expensive engagement ring he had bought for Olivia, and used the money to rent a tiny room in a shared apartment in Brooklyn. He got a job, not as an architect but as a construction worker, hauling lumber and mixing concrete. It was back-breaking work. He came home each night exhausted, covered in grime, his hands raw and blistered. But for the first time in his life, he felt like he was earning his place in the world. He started sending me letters. Not texts or emails, but handwritten letters sent to William's office. He didn't ask for anything. He just wrote. He told me about his new job. He told me he had found his father's letter. He told me he was sorry. Not just for the wedding, but for everything. For his selfishness, his blindness, his profound failure as a son. "I don't expect you to forgive me, Mom," he wrote in his 10th letter, "and I don't deserve it. I just want you to know that I finally see you. I see everything you did, everything you sacrificed, and I am in awe of you. You are the strongest person I have ever known. I love you. I read every single letter, my heart aching with a mixture of pride and sorrow." William would read them too, often with tears in his eyes. "The boy's finally becoming a man," he said one afternoon in my suite. "The man his father always wanted him to be." "I know," I whispered. After 3 months of silence on my part, I decided it was time. I asked William to arrange a meeting, not at my fancy hotel, but at the old diner in Queens. When I walked in, he was already there, sitting in the same booth we used to share every Sunday. He looked different. Thinner, yes, but also stronger. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a quiet humility. He stood up when he saw me, his eyes full of fear and hope. "Mom," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Hello, Michael," I said softly. We sat in silence for a few moments. He didn't know what to say. He just looked at me, his eyes filled with a lifetime of unspoken apologies. "I read your letters," I said finally. He nodded, swallowing hard. "I meant every word." "I know you did," I said. I reached across the table and took his hand. It was rough and calloused, the hand of a man who worked. It felt more real than his hand had ever felt before. "You don't have to do this anymore, Michael," I said gently. "The construction job, the tiny apartment. You've proven your point." He shook his head, a fierce determination in his eyes. "No, Mom, this isn't a punishment. It's who I am now. I like this person. I like feeling tired at the end of the day because I actually did something. I'm starting from the ground up, the right way this time." A tear slipped down my cheek, but this time it was a tear of pure, unadulterated joy. This was the son I had always dreamed of, the man my James would have been so proud of. "I have a proposition for you," I said, my voice beaming with pride. "I'm starting a new charitable foundation. It's going to build high-quality, beautifully designed affordable housing for low-income families across the city. It needs a project manager, someone who knows architecture, but also knows what it's like to build something with their own 2 hands. The pay isn't what you're used to, and the work will be hard. But it will be meaningful." His eyes widened, filling with tears. "Mom, are you serious? After everything I did?" "I am not giving you a handout, Michael," I said firmly. I am offering you a job. You will have to earn your place every single day, but I believe you can do it." He broke down then, sobbing like the little boy I once knew. "Thank you," he wept. "Thank you, Mom. I won't let you down. I promise I will never, ever let you down again." And he didn't. Michael took the job and poured his entire heart and soul into it. He was the first one on the job site and the last one to leave. He treated every construction worker with respect because he had been one of them. He used his architectural skills not to build monuments to wealth, but to create safe, beautiful, dignified homes for people who needed them. We rebuilt our relationship, brick by brick, just like the buildings he was now creating. We had Sunday dinners again, sometimes in my new, much cozier apartment, and sometimes in his small but clean Brooklyn place. We talked for hours, truly getting to know each other for the first time. About a year later, at a ribbon-cutting ceremony for the Foundation's first completed housing project, Michael introduced me to someone. Her name was Sophia. She was a social worker, a vibrant, kind-hearted woman who ran the community center affiliated with the new building. She had a warm smile and eyes that sparkled with intelligence and compassion. They had met on the job site, and their connection was immediate and real. When she shook my hand, she looked me straight in the eye. "It's an honor to meet you, Emily," she said. "Michael talks about you all the time. The work you're doing here, it's incredible." I watched them together, the way he looked at her with genuine adoration, the way she laughed at his jokes. There was no pretense, no agenda, just two good people who had found each other. 2 years later, I stood on a sunny beach, not as an uninvited guest, but as the guest of honor at my son's wedding. It was a small, simple ceremony, just close family and friends. Sophia wore a beautiful, simple white dress, and Michael looked at her as if she were the only person in the world. In his vows, he turned to me. "And I want to thank my mother," he said, his voice thick with emotion as the crowd watched. "Who taught me, the hard way, that true wealth isn't about what you have, but about what you give. She taught me what it means to be a man. Thank you, Mom. I love you." As I danced with my son at his reception, my heart was so full it felt like it could burst. He was happy, truly deeply happy. He had a wife who loved him for who he was, a job that gave him purpose, and a mother who adored him. He had lost everything, only to gain the entire world. And as I watched him spin his new bride around under the twinkle lights, I smiled. A calm, serene, and completely satisfied smile. My son was home, and we were all going to live happily ever after.